Hello everyone, this is Link here coming at you guys with another build guide for Hardcore Sanctum 3.20. Um, I'm currently playing a Lightning Strike champion that's using the Omniscience Amulet as well as the Ultimatum Shield. I don't know how to pronounce that, so I'm not going to try. I'm sure that a lot of people know and have played Lightning Strike Omniscience because of its recent popularity in the past 3 leagues. But this is my first time playing it, and I've playing it post nerf Lightning Strike with the elusive changes and Omniscience nerfs and a couple other things I think, but I don't really know too much about it. But overall, I would say this is one of the most well-rounded, complex, and most fun characters that I've ever made. There's a lot of intricate details that make this character work. I learned a lot about like damage conversion, how to scale damage with just like perseverance. Playing a melee build to 100, I think this is probably my first melee 100. I think. People say Lightning Strike isn't really melee, but to me it definitely plays like a melee build, and you're missing a lot of damage if you aren't quite in the melee proximity range. Um, but overall, it's been really fun. It's a blast to play it, and I just wanted to kind of share my thoughts and what I've done, what I've learned from this build, and maybe people out there can kind of learn from it. Just to give you guys a quick warning, this will probably be a long video because I like to be thorough in my guides and kind of what I've learned, and just like discuss and explain like how I've crafted this gear. Starting off, I'm going to be doing a quick mapping showcase of Maze of the Minotaur. This is kind of what I usually do with all my builds. Um, the build is pretty simple to play, I'd say. You have two mobility skills, which are your Flame Dash and your Whirling Blades. Um, we proc Adrenaline from the champion node using Corrupting Fever. So this is the reason why you'll see my HP drop quite a bit. But you can also see how insane my recovery is, and that's due to the Ultimatum Shield. Uh, even though we have no regen, we have pretty good life gain on hit. And by pretty good, I mean insane life gain on hit and leech. Um, while I'm mapping, my defenses are around 50k armor and evasion, which makes me pretty tanky. And then my max res is at what? Fire res is 90. And I'll go more into that in a bit. But you can see the clear is really good, the speed is good, and I'm just kind of one-tapping packs as I go along. Versus the boss, I popped Berserk, and my Lightning Strike, and makes quick work of him. So yeah, pretty quick and fast map. It's been really fun playing this. I haven't had any trouble. In terms of all the map mods I could run, it runs so many different kinds. It's definitely, like I said, one of the most well-rounded builds, and I can see why it was such a meta build for such a long time. And I'm frankly surprised that nobody is playing it because if we look at the PoE Ninja metas snapshot, only 0.3% of people are playing Lightning Strike, and at one point when I was playing it, when I first started this character, it was only like 3 people. Um, and I think it's a big reason. Like we can see how cheap Omniscience is this league, compared to last league, which it's 5 divines. Like this amulet, there's only 9 of them in this league. It's 5 divines. And, if you look at Ashes, Ashes has 4, so it's like a little bit more than like 5 more than that, and this is worth 45 divines. So you can see how the disparity in meta builds is kind of like affecting the prices and the builds. But rest assured, I can tell you this much: this build is insane. My damage in POB is I think around like 50 million with all buffs up, like 35 million, like probably on average. That being said, it is a melee build, so you do have to have like kind of like proper positioning and like the right moments in order to actually get like hits off and stuff in general. So to give you guys a quick defense overview, I'm going to kind of go over like why you should play this character, what makes it so safe and whatnot. First things first is that we are a champion, which means we get fortify, perma fortify. We're also using perseverance, which means that we have onslaught. So our movement speed is pretty good, just from running around and stuff. We have, I think 50k armor and evasion, like 55k evasion. This armor value goes up versus pinnacle bosses because I have my shield. I think max it reaches around like 70k armor, which is like, it's good. It's good enough to tank on pretty much everything in the game, minus maybe like a crit from a Shaper Slam. But yeah, I haven't had any issues so far. And with this type of armor value, that means that you're hitting the max guard 10k. Molten Shell buff, which is good because that means that you can react. If you can react and play accordingly, you're gonna have a pretty good EHP value. Like I said, this build has 0 regen because of the Ultimatum shield, which I'll go over it in a sec. We have 100% spell damage suppression. We have 85% max fire res right now, but this value goes up to 90%, and then chaos res goes up to 88. We have stun immunity. We have full elemental immunity from our boots, which we get, I think, 58 from here, and then another 25 from here, and then I think like another 10 from the tree, or 20 from the tree rather. Which is nice because that means that we can now not have to use Brine King because of our stun immunity from our Ascendancy. We can use things like Solaris and Lunaris, which are really, really big versus bossing. Our minor pantheons, we can just kind of do whatever we want, right? That being said, we also are running, Determination Grace, Defiance Banner. We're running Purity of Fire for the max fire res, and then next up is our life gain on hit from our claw. Because we're a claw build and we're hitting so many times with lightning strike, we get a high number in terms of life gain on hit. Let me go over the shield next. So the core items of this build is going to be Omniscience, Perseverance, and the Ultimatum shield. The shield is extremely rare. I think it's like a 6%, 7% drop rate in the Ultimatum map, which you can get from combining these like Ultimatum aspect pieces. I low-key think I don't know if it's low-key. I high-key think that this shield is absolutely broken and one of the best shields in the game, and that it is severely underused because, well, if you look at this, you're just like, what does it do? Like, how do you use it? So I'm gonna go over it step by step, kind of explain like how it works. So first things first is that we have Corrupted Soul, which means that we gain 15% of our life as extra maximum energy shield, which is the reason why when we equip this, we gain 845 energy shield. We have Divine Flesh. If you're familiar with that, it's from the Glorious Vanity Jewel. We convert 50% of elemental damage taken as chaos damage, and then we also gain 5% max chaos res. So we go from 78 to 83, and now we are converting all 50% of elemental damage. So if we take 1000 fire damage, now we're taking 500 of that fire damage as chaos damage. We have Eternal Youth, which means that our life recharge, or sorry, our energy shield recharge rate is now going to our life. So even though we have no regen, this is the recharge rate kicking in right now. This is how we quote unquote regenerate life. Which means that if we get hit, then that means we have to wait, I think like 2 or 3 seconds before the life recharge rate kicks in, and then we restore our life in that manner. The next thing to see is that we have Everlasting Sacrifice, which basically says that when you reach full energy shield, sacrifice all energy shield to gain plus 5% to all maximum resistances. So it's kind of a handful, but just to give you a TLDR, it's pretty much like it says. If our energy shield ever hits 845, then we'll gain plus 5 to all of our resistances. So our fire res goes to 85 to 90, and then our chaos res goes from 83 to 88. So if we go into something like Blood Aqueducts, we also gain Leech from Immortal Ambition, which is basically saying that we get Overleech, and then we have Valpact, which is doubling our Leech. So say we're hitting a mob, right? and we gain our leech, when our ES goes up all the way to max, you can see it reset, right? And when it resets, we go from 85 to, here it goes, it's gonna reset right now, and we got 90 and 88. You can see up here, everlasting sacrifice, that we have a thing. So essentially what this is saying is, that means that we need to constantly be doing enough damage or leeching such that we can keep this uptime of 5% to all max res for 4 seconds, right? And the easiest way to do this actually is this tech that I've thought of, um, is to use Ghost Shrouds. So how can we recover Energy Shield instantly from 845? You can kind of see while we're mapping that it takes quite a while for the leech to actually kick in, because Immortal Ambition has a innate degen, and then we're also getting less life recovery rate from Eternal Youth, right? So my workaround behind this was to use basically Ghost Shrouds. So in order to simulate a hit, we have Ghost Shrouds here, and if we have enough evasion, that means that I think what is like 40,000 times 0.03. So that means that on a hit, we're going to restore 1200 energy shield. So if we simulate a hit from using Forbidden Right, you can see that our Ghost Shroud will go down to 2, and our max res will go up to 90, right? So even though we didn't see the energy shield go up, like it's it's all happening simultaneously. We're taking a hit from some like hit, like a monster hit, a spell. In this case, we're just simulating a hit using Forbidden Right, and then we're going to gain max fire res and max chaos res. Okay, so like, what's the point of all this? Like, why we have fire res, but we have no cold and lightning res, right? So this is where the other combination kicks in, and this is what makes it so powerful. It's this Rakiata Lethal Pride Jewel. I think a lot of people have begun to caught on over the past couple of leagues that these timeless jewels are absolutely busted. This gives a basically notable that changes it from acrobatics to tempered by war, and this basically says oh, sorry. This basically says 50% of cold and lightning damage will be taken as fire damage. So, in other words, if we have from our shield, we have Divine Flesh, which is saying that 50% of all elemental damage goes to chaos, right? And then now we have Tempered by War, which is saying that 50% of cold and lightning damage go to fire, which means that if we look at the cold and fire elements, right? These are the 3 elements that we take. And then there's chaos, and then there's physical, right? Cold damage will become 50% chaos and 50% fire. And then we have the same thing for here, right? And then this one is taking 50% chaos, and then 50% is still fire, right? So nothing has changed here. And then this is just, it's still the same, chaos res. And then this is physical is kind of a, we'll go into that later. And this is mitigated by armor, right? So why is this so helpful? And the reason is that when you play versus bosses like Uber Shaper, or I guess Shaper in general, right? Or like Maven, they have built-in pen into their skills. So for example, like Shaper balls, I think have like 30 cold pen or something like that, and then Maven's fireball has like 30 fire pen. If we can convert the damage, then now when we take a shaper ball for like say like 10,000 or like like 5,000 or something like that, then we're going to convert it to 50% chaos and 50% fire, and now we're no longer taking cold damage. So that means that his cold penetration is just straight up obsolete. That means that we are taking basically all of the cold damage as 50% of chaos res, which is at 88%, right, when we take the hit, and then 90% fire res. So it's a very, I want to say complex, but it is something that I think damage conversion is a little bit tricky to understand. You kind of have to like go through the process and like understand like, okay, this is what's happening, like this is the logic behind it, and like, oh, this is why it's so useful. And same with Maven. Maven's fireball attack, it does like it does a large amount of damage, but if you're taking 50% of that damage and converting it to chaos damage, you're mitigating it by quite a bit. So really good. It's like the whole reason why when you have low armor and you want to convert physical damage taken as like elemental, right? Because naturally we always have 75% elemental resistances usually, and then that means that if we convert like a 10k fizz damage hit, then we can get like an 8% fizz damage taken as fire, and then convert 8% of that to the 75% mitigation. So yeah, um, I know that was a large handful, but I think if you can understand like what and like how these items are like working together or like being synergized together, then you'll realize how busted the shield is. Because that means that this shield is effectively giving you, like leech, overleech. It's giving you 5% to all max res. It's converting, half of our elemental damage to chaos. And then that means that we no longer have to worry about cold and lightning res, right? That means that we're freeing up all of our suffixes on our gear, which means like an item like this, we can just get suppress and attack speed. We don't need cold and lightning res. Like same with this one, we can get elemental avoidance, get more damage from like dexterity using omniscience. My helmet has suppression and dexterity, which is like and mana reservation, so we can fit in another aura. And it's a pretty big deal because suffixes are very important. They're always occupied by resistances, but it also turns out that suffixes usually also have a lot of the damage affixes like attack speed, crit multi, cast speed, um, etc. Right? So if we're able to ignore cold and lightning res, it makes gearing a lot easier. And then guess what? We also have purity of fire, right? Which means that purity of fire is where we get most of our resistances from omniscience, and then we get our last from remaining one from purity of fire. So it's kind of interesting to see how like none of my gear has res. The only thing it has is chaos res. Um, so yeah, it's a very interesting way to min max items. So to go more into the build, I'm sure that you guys all know how Lightning Strike works, but in case you don't, Lightning Strike is a melee skill where when you hit the ground in front of you, you can see this lightning bolt come down on the target in front of you, and then it also shoots out a projectile version. So Lightning Strike can hit 2 times, the projectile and the melee attack. And in this case, we have point blank, so we want to be as close to the target as possible in order to do as much damage. One thing to note is that we have the strike skills target an additional nearby enemy. You don't need 2, you just need 1. But what this allows to happen is that it allows um, it'll create like 2 beams basically, like 2 lightning bolts, and you can kind of like test this out by yourself. But actually, let me go find a mob. If I stand here, you can see how multiple beams come out, right? And that's what the glove implicit is doing. What this basically means is that now, instead of just hitting with our melee plus, uh, instead of hitting with just our melee plus proj, now we also get to hit twice with our melee and proj. So we're gonna get ×2 proj. So it's like effectively like a 50% more damage multiplier, right? Because if we're getting another portion of it. So that's kind of why Lightning Strike is so popular. It's like one of the few skills that allow you to even hit this, like hit in front of you in the first place. Skills like Molten Strike don't allow you to do that anymore, which is kind of weird, but take that up with GGG. I'm gonna go over the gems. The gems are going to be in our main hand. We have Lightning Strike, we have Trinity, Multi Strike, elemental damage with attacks, lightning damage, and then we have Nightblade. Um, so the way Nightblade works is that a lot of our damage comes from this jewel or this gem. You can see there's a lot to read here, but Basically, the TLDR is that when you crit, you gain elusive, and while you're elusive, you gain plus 1% critical strike chance, and then you also gain critical strike multiplier when you gain elusive. So what this means is that you get 138% crit multi, right? But then you can also scale elusive effect and then get even higher crit multi from this gem. And there's other ways to scale elusive effect, and that's through the dagger mastery. So it's another 40% crit multi. We have elusive effect from 40% here. I think there's like, oh, here we go. Here's the claw mastery, which gives you another 40% increase of effective elusive. So, when you go hit an enemy in say like maze, go show this really quick. Crit. Okay, there we go. So you can see my elusive effect started at around 200, I think 50%, and now it's slowly dropping. And as it drops, you can see my damage go down because my crit multi is slowly fading away. So here we have 200. Where is my lightning strike? Here we go. You can see my crit multi is slowly dropping as the elusive effect goes down. So right now it's at 283%. Okay, sorry. We gain elusive, and it was around like 700% crit multi. So the biggest nerf to this build was that in the past patches we used to have Withering Step, and a Withering Step would allow us to reset elusive effect. So that way we would always maintain this like 200% elusive effect. So that means our crit multi was always at like 700%. But with this patch, it means that we can no longer reset it, which means that our damage basically tapers off, and we have like our peak moments, like when we're like first hitting them in the first like 3 seconds or so, and then like the next like 3 second window when elusive is dropping from 150% to like 0%, your crit multi is low, your damage is low, and whatnot. So it's kind of like it is definitely a big nerf because now your damage is kind of like it's averaged out, right? Whereas before we were always able to maintain our elusive effect on the top end. But I'll tell you this much: it's not that big of a deal because sure, your fights take another like 10 more seconds, than usual. I guess for boss fights it takes a bit longer, but you know what's wrong with like fighting one more phase compared to what's wrong with like killing the boss in like 2 to 3 phases versus killing him in one phase. It's not a big deal. Like this build has so much damage. It was a justified nerf because of how broken the mechanic was. Going into my curse, we use Assassin's Mark, which gives us power charge on hits from the quality bonus, and then it also gives us a bunch of crit multi. We also gain frenzy charges through the mastery here, and then we also gain calling strike as well. So pretty good one gem. Do all these things that are really nice. We also gain mark on hit, so it automates our curses or our mark for us, so we don't have to cast it. In our helmet, we have our auras, which is Anomalous Wrath, Enlighten, Divergent Grace, and then Determination. Ideally, I want this to be Divergent Determination, but haven't been able to farm one. Just been unlucky. But yeah, so standard aura, evasion, and lightning damage. We have in our shield our guard skill, VMS, very cookie cutter. We have Berserk. So how do we gain rage in this build? And in order to do that, we use our sanctified relic. I picked up this one, gain 1 rage on hit with attacks, and this means that we get to generate rage. What's really nice about this build too is that we can use this Lethal Pride, which gives us Chainbreaker, which means that versus bosses like the Feared, like Uber Maven, whatever seems scary to you, we can pre-generate our rage and then start off the fight with 50 rage, and that's just using the Chainbreaker, and then we just sub this back in. So that's pretty nice, and then we have Berserk, which is giving us a lot of damage whenever we pocket. Even if we pocket like 5%, 5 rage. It's a lot because we can pretty much pop like anything within those couple seconds. Mobility skill is going to be Flame Dash, and then we have Whirling Blades here. We have Divergent Whirling Blades, which gives us 200% increased evasion rating while moving, which I'm not really sure how effective this is because you can see it goes up to like 81%. So I guess it's better than nothing, having it. Like I guess while we're Whirling Blading, we're like never getting hit, which is like pretty nice when you're like going to a pack, I guess. But yeah. We have Purity of Fire to give us our max fire res and all of our fire resistances. We have Defiance Banner because we're using Grace and Determination, and it's also reducing, like crit chance as well. We have Phantasmal Ancestral Protector, which is giving us a pretty big buff. It gives us a lot of attack speed. So like I said, when we go up to a boss, we pop down our totem, and then we pop Berserk and our Val Lightning Strike, and yeah, we just go ham. In our boots, we have Corrupting Fever, Life Tap, and Second Wind support. And the reason why we do this is that we have this First to Strike, Last to Fall node. If we click on Corrupting Fever, we'll drop right below half HP, and then we'll proc Adrenaline. So this allows us to maintain our Adrenaline for 100% of the game, right? We're no longer dependent on having to like drop below it in the first place, and it's just a really good way to, I don't know, just get 100% increased damage, attacking cast speed. We get 10% additional fizz damage reduction, and then yeah, I mean the only downside I guess is that we no longer have like a safety net, but I think the benefits like are so high that it doesn't even matter. Like I've had no issues before with it. And the only thing that's probably annoying is that you have to maintain, like you have to keep on looking at this buff, because if you proc Adrenaline, you're losing like 3k of your life, right? Which is kind of scary if you're in the middle of a pack. I've done it a lot of times though, and I've never had any issues with it. I'm still alive. But one thing you can always do is once you press Corrupting Fever, just press your HP pot at the same time. And then lastly, we have Divergent Precision, which is giving us all of our accuracy rating and a lot of crit. This build is dependent on accuracy. We don't have a hits cannot be evaded claw, so we gain accuracy from our belt, precision, aura effect, and a couple of nodes on our tree, like using an unnatural instinct from here, and then precision and accuracy notables here. I think we also have a jewel that gives us accuracy too, but yeah, this one, martial prowess. But that's enough to give us the 100% chance to hit. Cool. Going into our ascendancies really quickly. Like I said, it's a champion. We get perma fortify, cannot be stunned while fortify. We get adrenaline, perma adrenaline, and then we have inspirational, which gives us non-curse aura effect and a free banner reservation, which is defiance banner. So pretty simple. Pretty standard, nothing surprising, right? Going into our items, we have, of course, I explained omniscience. Omniscience is basically converting all of our attributes into omniscience, and this is all of our attributes are now giving us elemental resistances, Pen, which I think our omniscience is at 1036 right now. So what is that? 1036 divided by 15. So we're getting 70 elemental pen from our amulet. And then we're using the Perseverance belt, which basically gives us perma onslaught, because we're fortified. And then it gives us 1% increased attack damage per 200 of the lowest of armor and evasion rating. So that means that when we use this belt, we want to maintain kind of an equal amount of armor and evasion rating, and it'll pick between the lowest of the two and give us 1% per 200. So I think my evasion rating caps out at around 56%. And like I said, versus bosses, I think I go up to like 70k, so it'll pick evasion rating. So if we're at like 55603 divided by 200, that means that this belt is giving us 278% attack damage. It's quite a lot of damage. I think if you see here, like we go from like 138 to 217, so pretty insane belt, um, and it just kind of works out really, really well with this entire setup. The next but not least, we have our Ultimatum shield, which I explained all the benefits beforehand. Our claw is pretty simple. It's a tri-elemental damage claw. This one isn't like anything too crazy, but I just use essences on a fractured lightning base till I hit something like T3 or higher, and then I managed to hit the attack speed on this one, and then I all critted, and then got crit multi on this. But we want to try elemental damage claw because we're using the Trinity support gem. Um, Basically, I don't really know how to explain this properly, but you just want to have like an equal amount of damage between your fire, cold, and lightning like overlap so that you can maintain Trinity. And the easiest way is to just go hit a mob and then check if you're gaining the Trinity stacks on the top left. I'm gonna assume that people kind of know how that works because it's I think it's fairly straightforward. Um, well, I don't know if it's fairly straightforward, but like once you just want an equal amount of fire, lightning, and cold in a sense. Like you want overlap. It's the best way to explain it. My gloves are attack speed and suppress, and then we have life, and then we got AOE gems because we wanted to get the level 23 Fury of Fire. Um, from our implicits, we get lightning exposure from here, consecrated ground, and the strike skills target 2 additional nearby enemies. Our boots, we have suppress, um, dexterity, some sort of attribute, life, and armor and evasion. And then we get our +1 to max fire res from here because we needed that until before we get to 90. We have avoid elements, elemental ailments from here. And then the boot enchant adds 1 to 6 lightning damage. Really, really insane versus bosses. Helmet, also pretty much the same. Use deafening essence of loading until I hit T1 suppress, which I got pretty early on. And then we have another attribute roll, and then we have a veiled chaos roll for the AoE gems. And this is where all my other auras are. So big bonus with that. From the implicits, we have increased mana efficiency of skills and then reduced mana cost of attacks, so that, as someone who has 10 mana, it's important to be sure that we don't run out of mana. My ring is a fractured elemental damage with attack skills base. The way I crafted this was I used essences until I hit another T1 attribute roll. Then I did keep suffixes, reforge chaos, which guarantees the chaos roll. I was looking for T2 or higher. In this case, I hit the T2, which was perfect. And then I finished off the prefixes using a Veil Chaos or Ashling. And then I blocked mana, got the life, and then finished it off with the Elrion craft. And then I used a Calandra's touch ring to basically just copy this version, which is I think cheaper than recreating this, because trying to get the fracture on the elemental damage of attacks takes quite a bit number of tries. The chest, I got a temple base and then I fractured it on my first try, which was pretty lucky. Actually, it was my second try. And then I used essences until I hit T1 attributes. Did the same thing as my rings, which is, keep suffixes and then reforge chaos. Hit the T3 chaos res, and at this point I was like, okay, I don't want to spend too much money on this, and I can always improve it at some point if I need to. And then I did the veil, lock suffixes, ashling / veil chaos orb, got the max life, and then finished it off with the avoid ailments. And then the implicits, I got R effect, and then I hit the determination has increased R effect, the boss version, and I was like, okay, I'll keep this. It's pretty good. I think determ or having more armor versus the Ubers is very important. So it worked out. My flasks are pretty standard. We have our immune to bleeding instant life flask. We have our granite with attack speed, our jade with evasion. We have diamond with our curse for mapping, And then we have our Quicksilver with armor. All these suffixes can be interchanged, doesn't really matter. For bossing, sometimes I change out my Granite for the Bottled Faith, or sometimes even the Quicksilver for the Bottled Faith, in case I want to like insta-gib a boss. This is very good to have because it increases our crit chance. We're not at 100% crit chance on this build, but um, Bottle Faith gives us a insane multiplier because of the increased damage taken, increased crit chance taken, and then obviously the 40% increased damage from the Sulfur Flask itself. Um, my jewels, I have a Crimson Jewel with life and crit multi. We have a large cluster jewel. It's a eye level 84 one. You want the attack damage while holding a shield one because it gives you an extra 2% increased attack damage. This one I went for a fracture and I got it on the max life. Then I spammed, I think, Reforged Chaos until I hit T2, T1, and then another T2. So giving us quite a bit of life and different attributes as well as a lot of damage. We have the small cluster jewel, which gives us Born of Chaos to increase our max 3 chaos res. Remember, we are missing 2% max chaos res, which I haven't figured out a way to figure out how to get that last 2, but not a necessity. We have eye level 84 small cluster mana reservation efficiency jewel. I got insanely lucky getting T1, T1 life and increased aura effect. But the thing is, my suffixes are completely useless because it's giving me res and fire res, which I have no need for. But I think hitting T1, T1 um, on the reservation is like pretty unlikely, so I just decided to keep it for now. I might fracture this in the future, but we'll see. And a recraft on it. So we have our Lethal Pride here. We have I have a Watcher's Eye, which gives me crit chance while being affected by Wrath and increased lightning damage. Pretty good jewel. I managed to drop this on my own and find it myself, so I got pretty lucky and worked out. We have an Unnatural Instinct here by the Shadow Jewel. Gives us a bunch of accuracy, life, chaos res. Gives us life when we kill. We have increased frenzy and power charge duration, which is nice for bossing. We have the gain 30 energy shield per enemy kill, which is incredibly useful for mapping, which means that we can always maintain our everlasting sacrifice buff. Also gains some crit chance and some attributes. Pretty good jewel socket that's kind of underused, I'd say. Lastly, we have another large cluster jewel here. It's an 8 socket one. Gives us our missing accuracy, gains some leech and attack speed while we're leeching. Remember, we're over leeching, so it's a pretty big jewel for that. And then we have a Forbidden Flame and Flesh combo, which is the Slayer Bane of Legends. So it gives us 10% more damage while we map, and then we gain 20% more damage versus bosses. Cool. Let me think. What else is there? Okay, let's go over the passive tree. Um, in this case, we killed all of our bandits, so we have 123 passive points. We start off in the duelist area. We navigate to Point Blank and this large cluster jewel area. We also pick up Graceful Assault because we always have Onslaught due to our Perseverance. We pick up some Suppress because we're missing. Remember, we don't have Suppress on, I think, our boots, or sorry, our chest. So we're missing a little bit. We gain, I think, like 29% from here, and then like another 30 or something from here. Go to thick skin so that we get more elemental avoidance. Pick up some damage here, life here, accuracy here, crit multi here, suppress here. We get Grace has increased mana reservation from the evasion mastery. We get charisma for mana reservation, and then we grab a bunch of claw nodes and our large clusters. So pretty straightforward, I'd say. We get our elusive effects from here, and then we just pick up life from wherever we can. Um, yeah, so I guess to show you guys what my build used to look like in the beginning. One thing that I like to show off is the PoE Ninja. One very useful tool that you can do is go into some sort of character that you're interested in, and then you can click on Time Machine. Um, so before I even had this gear, you can kind of see my setup in terms of like how my tree was. You can see it's quite different. For example, now I'm pathing into the bottom side of Duelist, and then I didn't have any clusters set up here. A lot of my gems aren't even min-maxed, like I don't have the alternate qualities. I'm using a brutal restraint, so I don't even have the ultimatum shield in this version, and the build was like super strong still. I was using a blizzard crown here because I didn't need the purity of fire. Um, but yeah, so you can kind of like see and go through like how my build was. This build at this time, level 97, was still incredibly strong and able to do a lot of content. And then here, week 4, you can kind of see how my build changed quite a bit. And yeah. Um, the other thing I want to show you guys is how to import my POB. We can go into our account, look at my champion build, and I'll show you guys how to kind of check all the boxes. We're going to click all the flasks. We have Frenzy, we have Power Charges, we have Solar's first bosses, and probably Shikari, just for a little bit more damage. We have Life Tap, Onslaught, Fortify, Adrenaline, Elusive. Since it's 250, you can divide it by 2, so we'll just say it's around 125 effective elusive. We are leeching, Flask active, 1 nearby enemy. Our Trinity is at 50, which is the max. Reverse a boss, melee distance is 10, or sorry, we should go to projectiles rather, and lightning strike. And projectile travel distance is 10. The enemy is indeed shocked, and I think I've seen it. I think I've seen them get shocked for about 30%. The enemy is chilled for about 10% from what I've noticed. Enemy is exposed to lightning. They are intimidated and killed recently. This is from for Bane of Legends, which doesn't really matter. You can see our armor is at 73k versus Pinnacle bosses. One thing we need to add here is the gain 1 rage on hit. Gain no more than 0.8 seconds. Every. Where's the rage? Why isn't it showing up? Gain rage, 1 rage on hit with attacks. No more than once. There you go. Okay. Now then we get 50. Um, Another thing we need to do is to account for our extra lightning strike character. So the way we do this is we add 3 lightning strikes. So 20 like so, and then we have 2 melee hits and 1 projectile hit. So you can see my DPS is around 38 million. That being said, we do have Berserk activated too. Take out all of these. Add Molten Shell, and then when we have Berserk ticked and off, so it's around 26 million. And then if we're Berserking, then it goes up quite a bit. And then obviously, if we have max elusive effect, then our damage goes up to like 51 million. So that's with like everything perfect, right? That's pretty good. Um, and then of course we can always add Bottle Faith if we want to pad our stats more. But realistically, it's quite a bit because yeah, so our damage goes up to 63% or 63 million with just like if we're perfect positioning and we have all our flasks up, berserk up, our rage is at 50, and our elusive is at max elusive. And then this isn't even counting Vault Lightning Strike too, right? So we can add another like 2 Vault Lightning Strikes. Um, so yeah, oh, and then another thing we need to add is plus 5% to all maximum resistances, which is coming from the Everlasting Sacrifice Shield. And then lastly, we need Leaf Shade too, which is the invocation from our relic. So you can see my EHP here versus regular bosses is 825,000. Versus Ubers, it's still pretty high. You can see my elemental max hit is really, really high. um, and of course, remember that this is with Molten Shell up. So overall, insanely tanky. My damage is pretty high. Only downside is, of course, we have we are kind of a melee build. This build is a lot of money. I don't even know if people will be able to even farm the shield on hardcore, but you know, if you're playing softcore, then for sure the shield exists. Um, this is something that you know you can play even without the shield because it's just a normal omniscience lightning strike build. But this is just kind of taking it one step further. The one thing I like to do at the very end of my guide is also include what improvements I can make to this build. In my build, I can get a better EDPS claw, can double corrupt the shield here. Um, I can increase, or I get a better base here. I can double crop my amulet and then also get +1 to max all resistances, which means that my chaos res would go to 89. Um, Even getting increased attributes or whatnot. Maybe a curse even could be good too. Not sure. Um, I think my rings are pretty much perfect. It's really hard to beat this, so I don't think I would upgrade that. My belt I could upgrade. Just replace the rarity line with like attributes or even attack speed during any flask effect. And then you know my clusters I can always get better ones, just like slightly better ones. Like this one could be like a 3 crit multi one. So like another like 12%, 15% crit multi, and then just like better attributes on like my small clusters. Other things I'm missing from my gems is divergent determination. So you can see I would go from like 60k to like 65k. Um, and I think that's pretty much it. Yeah. Oh, I can get Woke Multi Strike too, right, from my actual gem itself. So, but Awaken Multi Strike is like barely a damage upgrade. Kind of interestingly enough, like it's at like 63k 3 mil. But I guess it's 4 million more for 4 million more damage. But yeah. Okay, I think that's pretty much it. That covers pretty much everything I want to say. Very fun build. I'm going to kill all the bosses at some point. Um, Highly recommend you guys check out my other videos of my kills in general, just kind of to see how this build plays versus bosses. It's overall pretty comfortable, pretty safe. I don't think I'll ever die in maps. The only thing I'll ever die to is Uber bosses. I've done like 5 Delirium maps before. I've done crazy pack size harvest farming. Been doing a lot of just general delving as well, like hunting for alls for my next build. And yeah, I think until next time, working on my next build for now, and I hope I can get that set up because I think it's gonna be a really good build. It's gonna be really fun and also hipster too, which is what I love doing. Um, Again, if you've watched this entirety of this video, thank you for watching. Feel free to like, subscribe, and comment if you have any questions, and I'll always be more than happy to try to answer them. All right, thanks for watching, guys. Have a good one. Bye.